We will continue with another reading. This one is from Whispers from Eternity. Teach me not to be deceived by the senses. O divine teacher, train me to recognize the difference between my soul's lasting happiness and the passing pleasures of the senses. Keep my eyes open that I be not deceived by my senses, decked out as they are in stolen royal trappings and in the mirage cloak of false happiness. As thus disguised, they try to enter the mention of my life. Discipline my unwise, wayward senses, that my pleasures be spiritualized, and that I look ever beyond the illusion of glittering, visible forms to find divine joy, hidden simply dressed in the white robe of humility. Always a delight to read these affirmations and prayer from Master. So before I start in our talk this week, I just want to make a little correction from something that happened the last time I gave a talk at Sunday service. It was about a month ago, and the topic was the eternal now. I made a statement, and I didn't know who the saint was, but somebody watched that talk and said, I didn't quite understand what that statement meant. So I went back and I looked at it, and I made a mistake. I didn't state it the way I should have. First of all, the Indian saint that made the statement was Meher Baba, and the statement is, a mind that is fast is sick. A mind that is slow is sane. And a mind that is still is divine. So I didn't say it in that sequence, and it didn't come off as clear. So my apologies for that. I stand corrected, and we move on now to our topic today. Self-effort too is needed. So in the reading, we hear about Jesus moving through the crowds, and this woman who comes up to him and reaches out and touches the hem of his cloak. And Jesus noticed that something different was there, because he was being pushed and probed and pulled by crowds, but he felt the touch of this particular woman. So how did she reach out to touch the divine in a way that the divine responded? How do we reach out to life? What is the quality of energy we put in? What is the quality of faith and devotion that we bring to our lives? Right now, we're moving through a very challenging time in our lives with this pandemic, and it's very easy to get drawn down and become negative and anxious and not be part of the solution. So it takes a tremendous self-effort to lift ourselves up from that fear and that anxiety and that negativity and hold our state of consciousness where we can funnel higher states of being and be able to be creative in order to move through this. On one hand, we would love the divine, like we reach out, like this woman reached out to Jesus for healing, to say, could you change this? And we could go back to normal. What is normal? We'd like this situation to be removed out of our lives so we could move on with our lives. Perhaps this situation is just what we need at this time as humankind to move on with our lives. On one hand, it's wonderful to think, okay, we could go back to what was. We get up in the morning, we go to work, children go to school, I come back in the evening, I have dinner, I go for a walk, I plan a trip. I had a way of living that has been altered now. But when we go back into habit, habit robs us of vitality, and it removes us from reality. And there's no greater self-effort than to resist those old patterns of comportment and habits that we're used to. Because when life becomes habit, we stop growing. Perhaps we stopped growing spiritually. We stopped evolving. We were very concerned in our own, perhaps, immediate situation. Now we're more aware. Our immediate situation has come to a screeching halt, and we're more aware of what's happening not only in our local towns, country, but globally. The self-effort that we put out here is not an effort to push and strive to get things done the way we think they should happen. It's a self-effort to remain aware and soft and present and available to what is trying to happen, to what is unfolding. Swami Kriyananda said that we have to be positive, receive life with a big yes. Whatever happened, whatever came into our lives, with open arms we receive it, welcoming it into our lives. And in that state of acceptance, yes, 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 in that state of absolute acceptance and flowing with what is, then we can see where change is possible. And we can affect the change there, only there, not by resisting and complaining and pushing away. There was once a woman who came to Yogananda, to Master, and she was talking about a big issue that she was going through in her life. And it was creating a lot of turmoil and conflict. And Master said, yes, I understand perfectly because I went through that once too. And the woman said, wow, you're a Yogananda, you're a master. Of course you overcame it. To what he responded, the difference between you and me is that I made the effort. So how do these saints and yogis live in ways that perhaps we don't? What can we learn from them? They live with great simplicity. They let go of non-essentials. Those non-essentials that vacuum the energy out of our lives. They drain us. So much attention to all these little things that ultimately don't really matter. And what do they pay attention to? They pay attention to substance. Pay attention to what is real, and they invest their energy in that. And so they have energy to move forward. They seem to have the wind in their sails. When we're anchored in that good space, in the space a saint, a yogi, or a master is in, we have more possibility. We have access to a greater spectrum of data and impressions that are all here. But we are closed off from that. We don't have access to that because our mind is creating so much turbulence. Our emotions are so chaotic that we can't see what really matters. I read this autobiography of this woman saint. She's called Peace Pilgrim. And she's an American woman, born in the 1900s, who realized that a self-centered life was not going to suit her. She realized the futility and the artificiality of Maya, of stuff, of matter. And she wanted to really tap into the richness of reality. So she started her spiritual journey. She did not have any one particular philosophy or religion to draw on, and she said that whatever she shares is universal. It's nothing new. It's ancient truths. Her purpose, she said, her main statement was, "I shall remain a wanderer until mankind has learned the way of peace, walking until I am given shelter, and fasting until I am given food." She walked and walked and walked all across the United States. She walked up north into Canada. She walked into Mexico. And in addition to all that walking, she was asked to make presentations at different venues, schools and clubs and universities who wanted to hear her message of peace. She said that spiritual growth is not easily attained, but it is well worth the effort. She said she went through many hills and valleys during her spiritual growing up time. And one time she was going through a particularly difficult time, and from there she felt herself being lifted into a state she had never experienced before. She felt a sense of spacelessness, timelessness, and lightness. She was experiencing this for the first time ever. Everything she saw around her had a halo of light. The phenomenal visuals were beautiful, but what she most remembered was an experience of unity with all of creation and with God. She was one with totality. And after this experience, this is where she took her vow to become a pilgrim. And all she had was a little jacket with the name Peace Pilgrim on it. And she walked and walked and walked and walked. She says that once you come into this state of unity, you become master of your body, your mind, and your emotions, because then your highest nature is ruling your life. She got to the point where she would tell her body, lie down on that cement floor and go to sleep, and the body obeyed. She would tell her mind, focus fully, bring all your energy to the task at hand, and the mind obeyed. She asked her emotions, in the midst of difficulty, still all the tumult, and quiet the emotional system, and the emotions became still. She said, once you are aligned with your purpose, with the divine, everything else falls into its place. Her mission as a pilgrim was to rouse people and to have them think in different ways, rouse them from apathy, rouse them from indifference, rouse them from the comfort zone, and to have them think and perceive life in new ways. So how do yogis prioritize their lives, these saints and yogis? They start their day with a strong sadhana, and they infuse themselves with that stillness, with that divine vibration, with that quiet that comes when you make that self-effort to pull away from your daily endeavors. Maybe not going to read the newspaper and perhaps meditate a little more. Maybe not make that telephone call. Maybe sit in my sadhana. Because once you prioritize that and you bathe yourself in those still waters of meditation, that state of being follows you like a divine fragrance, and you can share it with everyone. Everyone that comes into contact with you receives a blessing. The blessing of that presence, of that light that you are immersed in. And when we're not anchored in this meditative state, we live on the pendulum of emotions, of thoughts, of experiences, swinging from one extreme to another. Like rocks in the desert that expand in the heat of the day and then they contract in the cold of the night. Over time, this creates fissures in the rock. What happens to us when that pendulum keeps swinging from extreme to extreme? What happens to our nervous system? Maybe metaphorically speaking, we get those fissures, but those fissures are weakened nerves, shattered nerves. And when our nervous system is weakened, how are we going to experience the divine? So we need to pay attention to how we invest our energy. When Jesus was walking through the crowds and that woman touched him, what was it that she did to obtain Jesus' attention? She was there to be healed, surely, but she was also there to love, to share what she had. She sent out her energy to Jesus. Her love and her energy were her emissaries. And Jesus picked that up in his consciousness, in his heart. Because like attracts like. He recognized that energy. It wasn't the grasping of the multitudes that were just trying to draw from themselves. She was there to offer, not only to take. So if we are to offer something to the divine, we need to have what we're going to offer. What is the level of energy and attention that you bring to your spiritual life? If we are going to be explorers in the field of consciousness, we need to invest our energy wisely and utilize it intelligently. And the wisest way to utilize and invest your energy is through a strong meditation practice. Meditation anchors us in reality. When we're anchored in what is real, we don't sweat the small stuff. We're centered. We hold that sacred space with us when we leave our meditation cushion. That space is sanctified. Hold on to it, no matter what comes into your life. When you're in that higher state of being, you'll notice that everything falls into its own place. Everything finds a resolution. Everything gets settled. This space is a gift, a precious, precious gift. Don't take it lightly and hold on to it with everything you've got. You made the self-effort when you went to your sadhana and you removed yourself from the surface of mundane activities. You removed yourself from the noise and distraction. And grace met you halfway and supported you and gifted you on your journey. That's what grace does when you invest your energy intelligently in what is real. Grace is always there for you. There is an anecdote about Devi Mukherjee. He was, I think he's still alive though. He wrote a little book, Shaped by Saints. He was a direct disciple of Master Paramahansa Yogananda. And on one occasion he went on pilgrimage to India. And he arrived to meet Narayan Swami. Once he settled into his dwelling and started conversing with Narayan Swami, the Swami told him he hadn't eaten for 6 days because the closest place to buy food was 10 miles down the mountainside, and the Swami thought it wasn't worth investing his energy and time in just fetching food. At night, they shared. Devi Mukherjee told Narayan Swami that he was a devotee, a disciple of Paramahansa Yogananda, and Narayan Swami said, yes, saints like that are sent from the stars. They come from the stars, from infinite consciousness, meaning infinite consciousness. They come to earth, sent by God, for those who care to listen. And that night, Narayan Swami told Devi, do not come out of your dwelling after midnight. It is not safe. So Narayan Swami peeked through his window, and at midnight, 10 to 12 tigers and their cubs were out on the ashram grounds, with Narayan Swami petting them, petting these beautiful regal tigers. He was surrounded by tigers, and he was petting them like kittens. So the following day, Devi said, that was so beautiful what I saw last night. I love pets, I love animals. I'd like to come out and pat the tigers with you. Narayan Swami looked at him intently and he said, yes, you have love, but only 60%. You need to increase your love 40%. Only then can you pat tigers. Otherwise, you'll become their meal. And the following night, the same thing happened. He looked out his window, and there was Narayan Swami patting these beautiful, enormous tigers. So the following morning he says, how is it that you can do this and I can't? I want it so badly. He said, love is a tremendous power. When you have love 100%, you can do anything you want. You need to increase and work on your love. Then you too, in time, will be able to do anything you want. Self-effort. What is the energy we put into increasing our love? Doing our sadhana. Waking up. What is your priority? Your inner life or your outer life? As long as you are making an effort, God will never let you down. Never. And in the words of Narayan Swami, in time, you too will be able to do anything you want.